have several updates on the Kristin Smart case, starting with Paul's appeal updates and some updates regarding Kristin's family, among other things. You know, I've been covering this case beginning to end. I look forward to the day I report that Kristin's remains have been found and reunited with her family. I want a complete accounting, so let's get the latest updates on record. I already covered Paul's original appeal in 2024, and we'll hear more about the $346,000 that Paul owes Kristin's family for restitution. I also have some local scuttlebutt that I've been trying to confirm 100% with the SLO County DA, Dan Dow. Paul is serving 25 to life at Corcoran State Prison after being moved due to two separate attacks on him at Pleasant Valley State Prison. The newest 75-page appeal lists most of the same points as Paul's last appeal. Paul's attorney disputes hearsay regarding a witness stating Kristin looked roofied the night she disappeared. Paul's appeal says photos were misused for character purposes. Of course, the appeal states violation of due process because two of Paul's previous rape victims testified against him. California law allows this, by the way. Paul's attorneys claim there was not any evidence that Paul SA'd Kristin. They are still complaining about the female juror number 273 that they repeatedly tried to have removed during the trial. I'll keep you posted, but I expect this appeal will also be denied. Will Paul return to SLO County for another upcoming trial? What trial, you ask? Well, this is a civil suit involving volunteer investigator Dennis Mahan and Paul's mother, Susan. Many locals admire the work that Dennis did way back in the beginning. Dennis's attorney filed a motion to transfer Paul from prison to SLO County Jail for the September 2025 civil trial. September 8th to be exact. Dennis was introduced to Kristin's family by the family of another missing girl named Kristin. He has been a great support to the Smart family. One of many things Dennis would do is picket in front of Susan's house with a sign saying, "Dig up Susan Flores' yard." Sorry. In 2001, Susan jumped on Dennis as he walked past her home. Cops handcuffed Susan, put her in the cruiser, but released her instead of bringing her to jail. In 2002, Susan and her boyfriend Mike filed a restraining order after accusing Dennis of stalking and harassment. Susan subsequently claimed Dennis was jogging past where she worked at the time. They arrested him and he spent 12 days in jail. Then the tables were turned when Susan's boyfriend Mike was calling and hanging up at Dennis's place of employment. Mike's phone number was captured on the caller ID. Dennis filed a civil suit in 2005 against Mike alleging harassment. Shortly after Dennis's filing, Susan and Mike filed a counter-complaint for emotional distress. The court tabled all lawsuits while the criminal investigation was ongoing, causing Dennis to drop his lawsuit. Once Paul was convicted of murder, Susan and Mike dropped another lawsuit against Kristin's family, as Kristin's family agreed to drop the personal injury suit they filed against Susan and her husband, Reuben. I know this is confusing, sorry, and it's going to get more confusing, so pay attention, take notes if need be. Most people don't have a husband and a long-term boyfriend, but Susan does. Apparently, after many years of battling cancer, Mike recently died on July 6, 2025. Now, Mike is her boyfriend. He died just days before the hearing, so they had to move the date to September 8th of 2025, leaving Susan the only plaintiff listed and Dennis the only defendant left on the case. Dennis wants Paul there to testify, stating his testimony is necessary to resolve key factual disputes regarding the alleged harassment and the impact Dennis's conduct had on Susan. This commentator shares a similar sentiment as most of us. Dennis was a very strong contributor to the finalization of this case. He really gave his life to helping to find Paul Flores guilty, as we all know he was. It is my hope that Dennis gets vindicated, as all he did was what any kind, caring, compassionate member of our society who has a strength in solving cases would do. I know Dennis personally. They don't come more authentic than Dennis. He had a real heart for the case, and I believe he has been thrown under the bus. I too have been involved in the Kristin Smart case since Kristin was murdered. So Dennis and I were very close. I pray you're vindicated, Dennis. My thoughts are with you. By the way, my dad's name is Dennis. He's also a great, he passed away, but something about those Dennises, right? Let's change gears to another pending lawsuit connected to this case. This one is Kristin's family against Cal Poly University. Mediation has failed for the family's wrongful death, negligence, and negligent infliction of emotional distress case. Even though Kristin was murdered in 1996, this wrongful death case was filed in 2023 after Cal Poly's president finally publicly apologized, saying, quote, "We recognize that things should have been done differently. I personally wish that they had," end quote. College laws and procedures regarding missing students changed thanks to Kristin, making campuses safer places for others. Here is more of President Armstrong's statement. The Smart family lawsuit allegations include that they waited 4 days before witnesses were interviewed, including Paul, who was last seen with her. They did not seal off Paul's dorm room. Finally, 16 days later, they searched Paul's dorm room. Cal Poly failed to act regarding reports of Paul threatening, stalking, and harassing female students. The suit gives examples such as climbing to an apartment balcony to spy on girls. Approximately 3 months later, he crank called other females for 6 weeks, filling up their answering machine tape. Remember the answering machine tapes? And then he climbed up to their balcony as well. He vandalized Cal Poly property. He harassed Poly's staff. And they reminded Paul that he could lose his student housing for harassing. The Smart family alleges that if Paul had been properly disciplined, he wouldn't even be on campus, and therefore it would have prevented him from killing Kristin and from raping countless other women over the years. The suit seeks money damages and attorney fees. April 2nd, 2024, California Attorney General asked the court to reject the suit on Cal Poly's behalf because it fails to provide statutory basis for liability, lacks standing to sue, and is barred by immunity. The California statute requires a 2-year maximum to file an injury claims within 6 months. The Poly president's statement, quote, "did not cause the alleged failure to investigate or the murder," end quote. The demurrer states that family cannot bring negligent suits suffered by family members, and siblings can't bring wrongful death claims. The state also claims the Smarts already sued in 1996 and lost. Another hearing is coming up on August 15th, 2025. Moving on to the next bit of mess created by Paul, which is another lawsuit. This one is against Paul's parents for failing to pay a private investigator. Mr. Messina worked on Paul's case with the defense team as a private investigator with Robert Sanger. He attended Paul's 2021 preliminary hearing and his 2022 murder trial. Messina has never been paid for 4 years of cumulative time and incurred cost. Both of Paul's parents, Susan and Reuben, both signed a guarantee of payment. Is anyone surprised that they welched on that? We all have heard about this family's rep. Following the money is a twisted tale. Sanger, Paul's defense attorney, put a lien on Paul's home, a deed of trust with the power to sell. After Paul was convicted of Kristin's murder, he sold the house to his parents, yet the PI wasn't paid. And even Sanger was not fully paid, according to the suit. Apparently, Paul's parents own the house, and Sanger has not released his deed of trust with power to sell, according to the LA County Clerk records. Records show February 2023, Reuben took out a reverse mortgage with a $2,350,500 line of credit. My goodness. It's unknown how much was paid to Sanger. In May of 2024, Messina sued Rubin and Susan for $40,525 plus attorney fees. Now let's get to an odd part of the updates. It started on our Neighborhood Next Door app. Check it out. Here is the originating post. San Luis Obispo elected District Attorney Daniel Lester Dow, Esquire, violates the law and misconduct all on taxpayers' taxes. He went to a legal visit Rubin Flores, asking him to come clean and tell him where they hid Kristin Smart's body. There's typos here, guys. This is very unethical and very illegal. Why is Dow interfering in a case where Rubin was not guilty and his son, Paul, was guilty? Then our DA tries to secretly get Rubin to fess up on where they hid Kristin Smart's body. What the? Question mark, question mark, question mark. They didn't proofread that. But anyway, let's move on. Let's see what some of the comments have to say. Wasn't he charged with accessory to murder? I'd ask him too. Wait, this is what we all want. Ha ha ha. What you going on about? Why are there issues? He hit his son? Maybe? Okay, that person's lost apparently. This person says, because he knows. Sean Paul on the road. He doesn't get away in society without my freedom of speech to him. For Kristin and her family and myself, he's a waste. Okay. I'm glad he asked him. I wish they would just fess up and tell the family where her body is. True that. This person has a lot to say. It's a long one. Well, we know Rubin Flores, the father of Paul Flores' murder case. Rubin was found not guilty. His son Paul was found guilty on flimsy evidence, now on appeal. I disagree. Anyway, moving forward. Why is the elected DA, Dan Lester Dow, coming and trespassing on the Rubin home? Dan Dow, using his county vehicle, came to Rubin's house, asking him if he told Dan where they put Smart's body. Dan used his religion as a ruse in a crude attempt to get him after being found not guilty so he could not be prosecuted again. Tell Dan where the body is, and Dan would get Paul transferred to the men's colony in SLO. Oh, and if her remains are located, then the civil suit would go away and give the Smart family peace. What a con to play on them. Dow went to see Rubin several times. All a ruse. This is very illegal misconduct. Okay, that person is just so not what most locals feel. Anywho, moving on. They're free to feel that way if they'd like. Keep in mind, I do reach out to the district attorney, and I'll tell you how that went as well. This person again says, we too heard Rubin Flores tell several people about Dan Dow's illegal visit. And then Karen says, Perry, did you just realize you commented on your own post? All right, so the answer is a little bit of the question. I was wondering where this info came from. It came from the accessory to murder himself. Of course, he was found not guilty. Robert says, I wish he would have arrested him and put him in jail too. Well, he can't do that. Megan says, Rubin, is this your alias? That's what I wanted to know. It sounds like something only Rubin would say. I know people who were friends with the family for years, and when this all came to the head, they realized they were bamboozled too. Anyway, Shannon says, Megan, it's gotta be. And they say they live in the same neighborhood. Okay, so this must be, the original person must be one of Rubin's neighbors. I'm just guessing here. And Beth says, oh my, maybe listen to the In Your Backyard podcast. Honey, everybody's already listened to that, but good recommend, Beth. All right, let's see. Continuing on. Beth, good one. He probably has. Oh, I see. Beth is telling that person to watch the podcast. Margaret says, Rubin belongs in jail. Dan Dow is trying to bring Kristin's remains home. Admirable. Carrie says, I don't think anybody cares if it's illegal. True that. It would be nice to put this whole ordeal to rest once and for all. I agree. We need to find her. This person says, good. Chris says, if you have a legitimate complaint regarding DA Dan Dow, contact Rob Bonta at the State Attorney General's office with the information. Interesting. I'm not happy with them, but I'm not going to go that far. Uh-oh, I almost missed this one. Why would you defend this parasite? Jill says, I don't usually back Dandau and his tactics, except in this case. No sympathy for Reuben here. Side note, I don't usually back Dandau either. Moving on. Yeah, he's done a lot of messed up stuff. Moving on. Perry, can you stop yelling? All caps means yelling. Sounds like you're defending Reuben. Cool, but don't yell at all the rest of the folks on next door. Karina says, this most likely is Reuben or a dear friend of his. Of course it is. Duh. Kathleen says, Diane, Paul is in jail. Reuben is not. He's out here making these posts under an alias. Kathleen says, oh. Aaron, you joined Nextdoor specifically to post this? You seem to be the only person in SLO County that has any empathy for the Floreses. We all know what they did. We all know it's been covered up. They're barking up the wrong tree here. Bravo. I'm assuming they were able to tell this person just joined. Who is this jerk trying to defend these monsters? Alyssa says, Reuben is guilty and I hope he lives the rest of his miserable life having to deal with it. He's lucky he was found not guilty. If things had been done in a timely manner from the get-go, both him and Susan would be locked up as well. They should be counting their lucky stars that they are free. I agree with that. Here's the rest of Alyssa's because it went on a second page. So then she says, we all know they are guilty and nobody could convince me any different. The Smart family deserves to lay their daughter to rest. Justice for Kristin Smart. Yep. Sharon says, I had a family member who went to high school with him and she is very smart and honest. She was in a carpool to get to school with him. She said to me that everyone who knew him, he gave them the creeps. Thank God she was never alone with him. That's for sure. Leanne says, Reuben Flores is lucky the community isn't breaking down his door holding their own shovels. Yeah, historically that's happened here before. They lynched some people at the train bridge. Who cares? Reuben is just as guilty as his disgusting son and should be in prison alongside him. As a matter of fact, so should his mother. The entire family knew what that POS son did to that beautiful girl and did nothing. They allowed the Smart family to live all these years in sadness and grief, wondering what happened to their daughter. They knew all along, and Paul continued to hurt other women decades later. No one feels sorry for Reuben. As far as the community goes, he should be in prison with his son. I agree. And it sucks because he was never prosecuted for the other rapes, for the other ladies. I've even written the LADA about that one. It's on the episodes. Sue says, seriously, you're looking for sympathy for Reuben Flores? You need to read the room, dude. Olivia says, dude, go away. Reuben, Perry. Yeah, exactly. Whoever you are. Imposter. Okay, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this Kristin Smart stuff. I called the SLO County DA. I spoke to the lady there. She had no knowledge of what I was talking about. She said she could not comment. She referred me to where I need to go to send a message direct to the DA. So this is what I'm sending. Please confirm or deny your recent visit to Reuben Flores inquiring where Kristin Smart's remains are located. Our local Nextdoor app is currently debating this visit. I would simply like to know if it is true or just another internet fake story. I don't believe in just believing everything I hear. I'm not sure how anyone would have access to this info. I do not know what we have the right to as taxpayers either. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your prompt reply. To be continued. After no reply from the DA as promised, I reached out again a month later. Here's that second message. This is my third attempt for this information. One phone call, one inquiry through this method, and again here. Still no answer. It has been reported that Reuben Flores was recently approached for the location of Kristin's body. I want to know if that was true and where this information was acquired. Can you also tell me where I can go to find out more information regarding Paul's most recent appeal? Thank you for your time. I look forward to your reply. Will it ever end? The court dates go on and on and on, not just for Paul, but for the Smarts, for Dennis, for Paul's parents, for Cal Poly, for Paul's PI. Even Paul's attorney never got paid all the way. And most importantly, Kristin has never been recovered. Since 1996, it's been a giant, tragic mess. We're over this, family. A lot of us wonder how they even stay here and show their faces knowing how they're despised. But we're a pretty small community and we're calm and loving. So I guess that's why they stay. There's a lot of places, like that person said prior, they'd be beating down the damn doors. Oh, it's just so heartbreaking. I can't wait till they find her. I pray for it often. So, in closing, was the visit truly illegal? Is that why the district attorney continues to ignore me? I'll be sure to keep you guys posted on any further updates, of course. Hashtag find Kristin smart.